When the ship was taking her back to France, she couldn't hold back her tears. The accusations leveled against her, Princess Margaret Capet, were terrible and unjust. But no amount of reasoning could convince the heir to the English throne that his wife was innocent of adultery. After all, she had become too much of a liability for him. Margaret was one of the daughters of King Louis VII and the Castilian Infanta Constance. She hardly remembered her mother, who died giving birth to her second child in the year 1160, and her father hastily remarried. Her stepmother, Queen Adele, was not particularly fond of Margaret. A typical story. Her noble birth guaranteed Margaret a fairly standard and prosperous fate, a marriage alliance with some prince. Indeed, at the age of 2, she was promised to the English heir, Henry the young king. The prince was also young, only 5 years old, but his parents were eager to announce the engagement, as this marriage would help them resolve their own issues. For a long time, the English and the French had been disputing the territory of Vexin, and now this troublesome land was to be part of Margaret's dowry. According to the customs of the 12th century, when a girl was promised to someone as a bride from a young age, she would move to her new family. This was a sensible approach. It provided an opportunity to learn a new language, if it was a different kingdom, adapt to new traditions, and get used to the numerous relatives she would soon call her own. In Margaret's case, the traditional route was taken, and she was soon transported across the Channel to her new family. No one in Paris mourned for the orphan girl. She was merely a pawn in political games. The French princess took an interest in studying the English court. It wasn't entirely foreign to her, as her fiancé's mother was also a Frenchwoman, Queen Eleanor of Aquitaine. In London, they understood Margaret's language well, and she quickly picked up the court etiquette. Learning came easily to her. In the year 1170, her fiancé, Prince Henry the young king, was named co-ruler with his father. This didn't happen very often. The heir to the English throne was crowned, but Margaret was not. It was at that moment that Paris decided to remember the girl. The King of France was furious. What an affront to his pride. He sent his daughter to London, where she was meant to become the Queen of England. So why such an insult? Correspondence went back and forth for several months. The English side acknowledged the faux pas, but responded that the girl was still too young. Once she grew a bit older, they would marry the young couple and crown them immediately. What the King of France sought came to pass on the 27th of August in the year 1172 at Westminster Abbey. Margaret Capet was crowned alongside her husband. During the festive banquet honoring the newlyweds, Henry and Margaret, an awkward incident occurred. Old King Henry, pouring wine into the goblets, chuckled and remarked that it was unprecedented for a king himself to serve as a cupbearer, to which his arrogant son immediately retorted, "The son of a count should certainly serve the son of a king." An uncomfortable silence fell. King Henry II was indeed just the son of the Count of Anjou. Margaret allowed herself a suppressed laugh, earning a furious glare from the English king in return. This incident marked the beginning of a real rift between the king and his eldest son. Margaret did not take part in the conflict. She merely watched from the sidelines as things escalated into a full-blown civil war. She and her husband saw each other infrequently, but in the year 1177, the couple welcomed a son, named William. Tragically, the boy lived only 3 days. After reconciling with his father, Prince Henry began to spend more time with his wife. However, contrary to expectations, Margaret did not conceive again. This was a significant disappointment for the heir to the throne. Here was a brilliant tournament fighter, a warrior, and the future ruler of England, yet he had no son. Tensions grew between the couple. Then, in the year 1182, a scandal erupted. 2 of the prince's knights claimed that there was an affair between Margaret of France and the prince's closest friend, William Marshal. Enraged, Henry demanded an investigation. Margaret vehemently denied the allegations, and so did Marshal. The accusation seemed strange, as neither the princess nor the knight had ever had scandalous reputations. Moreover, there was no evidence of their alleged closeness, other than the words of the accusers. However, Prince Henry chose to believe the gossip. For a time, he maintained the appearance of a friendly relationship with William Marshall, but after a tournament in the fall of 1182, the knight left the entourage of the English heir. The following year, Margaret Capet was sent back to France. She returned humiliated, unhappy, and utterly crushed. Her homeland felt foreign to Margaret after so many years spent in England. Her relatives made it clear that they were not particularly pleased with her return, as her status was uncertain. Who was she? A princess of France? Or a divorced English princess? It was an extremely awkward situation. However, soon there was no need to worry about her status. In June of that same year, Prince Henry died of dysentery and Margaret became a widow. Understanding the bleakness of her situation, the unfortunate young woman began to visit the Fontevraud Abbey more frequently, contemplating settling there, when suddenly, she caught the attention of King Bela of Hungary. He was 10 years her senior, a mere trifle in the 12th century. She was to become his third wife, which was not uncommon either. But most importantly, he was fabulously wealthy and ruled a powerful kingdom. An educated, well-mannered king, a champion of enlightenment, and an excellent administrator. It was a fairy tale proposal, unbelievable for a still young widow with a tarnished reputation. Margaret of France was preparing for a long journey. Bela III and Margaret Capet were married. There were no children from this marriage, but the Hungarian king did not mourn this. He had already fathered 7 children in his second marriage and had no shortage of heirs. The French princess finally found a home and lived there happily for another 10 years. Alas, her beloved Hungarian husband passed away in the year 1196. Twice widowed, Margaret Capet decided to embark on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. She intended to pray for her only child and for her beloved second husband, but just a few days after arriving in Acre, the Queen of Hungary passed away. Margaret's final resting place was in Tyre, Lebanon, where she was buried. Her family did not rush to visit her grave. It was too far. Once again, it was an uncomfortable situation.